Oh,
What?
none. No.
You haven't philandered with any women?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm not telling you though.
any women? Right, we're now live. I just gotta put something off. So is that sounding loud and clear?
Sand, yep.
Was ist das, mein Führer? Can you hear me, Bill?
Yep. Loud and clear. Carry on.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag, mein Herr. Guten Abend.
Ah!
Wie geht es Ihnen?
Ah, was ist das, mein Herr?
Ah, das
Was
ist
ist
gut.
gut, ja?
Das ist gut, Abend.
Ah, gut, ja, gut, ja, gut, ja.
Oh, wie denn
Richard, die sprechen die Deutsch?
You want to be careful with that. You'd be stopped from coming into the country.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's true. That is true. What, like Kanye West?
You haven't got any T-shirts with swastikas on, have you? Well,
You're not allowed to use the word swastika because you've got to say the unfriendly windmill. Apparently. Well,
no.
we'll just wait 1 minute and then we'll get started. Okay. Oh. Bloody hell. It's fucking hot. I tell you what, right? I'd prefer to be a penguin's chuff at this minute. Right. It's 7:09, so this is really early. And before anyone says it, yes, we'll try and finish before 8 o'clock. Well done. So
Yeah, I've got to be away by 9.
all right, just go on. Bill's gonna say, oh, he's gonna be away because he gets tired and he's got a woman to see in the morning. We know Goff's taking a woman out tomorrow. I don't want to know.
Let's go then.
Right, and he's going to the Bridgend Cinema. I don't know what film he's seeing, but there you go. Right, any news from you, Bill?
No, nothing, Carl.
Oh, right, that's a shame. Yeah, there hasn't been anything in the news recently, but that's probably good for me. It lets me flow. Goff, any news from you?
No, it's been all quiet.
Right. So I just, whilst I was doing this last night, I realised what I might start to do is just look at complete Roman archaeological excavations and sort of look at stuff, and because I was going through different bits last night in the presentation that I'm doing now, and it felt that if I had more excavation reports and I was focusing on them, I could put a bit more body, because at the end of the day, I'm an archaeologist. And I was given an award on Thursday, which I'll tell you about in a few moments. Richard, no, I wasn't knighted. But then again, who would want that these days? Anyway, well, if you're a BBC, well, we'll just carry on. Right, Richard.
Nothing from me.
And I think the name you guys were looking for earlier on, Richard, were you on about John Romer, the Egyptologist?
No, Mortimer Wheeler.
We've got an image of Mortimer Wheeler today. I tell you what, Richard, I tell you what, this is, I'm going to say this now. I've got a big collection of VHS tapes. many of them recorded in the early 80s when the BBC was just destroying their archives, which is criminal. And I might have one or two tapes of footage with Sir Mortimer Wheeler. And I'm just obviously other people would have taped it, but lots of people have got rid of their VHS collections, and I'm going to start going through all my tapes. And
There's some on the BBC at the moment.
say that again?
Just scroll down. There's a few on the BBC.
Yeah.
Scroll down.
Yeah.
With, he's with Magnus Magnuson.
That's not with Animal, Vegetable and Mineral in the 1960s, is it? And Glyn Daniels.
No. He's just discussing. He's got a few different stories when he's out with the Egyptologist.
Ah, right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
What's his name?
Flinders Petrie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's up in Brecon with him.
Ah, because Flinders Petrie died about 1940, and his brain was sent to Oxford University or something, in a jar. That was a bit weird.
I think Mortimer Wheeler was with him, either when he died or visited him shortly before he died in Egypt.
Oh, right, Egypt or Palestine.
Egypt, yeah. Oh yeah, I think it might have been Palestine actually.
Yeah. It may have actually been Palestine at that stage, because the British would have evacuated lots of people because of the Italian invasion. So yeah, it's more likely to be Palestine. Right. So, should we go on to my images, folks?
Yeah, why not?
Good. Well, I'm using new technology tonight. So obviously with new technology, as you, Richard, some things don't really always go well. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll just go on to start the screen. And anyone at any point they think my voice has disappeared, then you need to shout in and let me know. I don't want to go on for a whole half an hour and everybody turn around and say we didn't hear a word. So I won't remind Goff of sitting in a whole lecture for a whole hour and then not telling me that he hadn't seen a single change of an image. And by the way, I'm an award-winning filmmaker now, and there it is. So and that was for Wildfire Outbreak UK. So we're hopefully the film festival in the Cardigan Bay is coming up, so I'm pegged for that as well. Anyway, I thought I'd be sort of say that. Last night I did something really vague. I said, "Where's this? Go on, where's this, Bill? Go on, tell me where this is."
It looks Italian. It looks Italian.
Bill, I'm going to give you a clue. We've been there. Oh, right, that doesn't help.
Colchester.
Bingo! Bill hasn't even been. Bill's been to Colchester with me, but it is Colchester. It's Colchester Castle.
Oh right. Okay.
And I actually, Bill, right? You're in with everybody else last night who didn't get this at all. Even Roger. Roger didn't get this, and he was in Colchester with us as well. So this is Colchester Castle, and basically the whole thing. All that red stuff is Roman material. It's very likely, other than these dress stones, which are restored bits on the side, right? Most of this is actually constructed out of Roman building material in and around Colchester. End of. And this is directly based and built from the remains of the Roman temple of Claudius, which, as I've said many times before, was flattened, lost, demolished, subjected to being filed away in history around AD 60, probably about late AD 60. But some people argue that it's actually AD 61, but we're not going to go there with dates. We don't really do dates at this minute because we don't really do history. We're doing archaeology. So leading on from last week, I sort of thought, right, I wanted to do a little bit more of Londinium. I wanted to chuck us into Colchester. and I wanted to do a few things around the side. Now, I have decided that one of the presentations will be to look at a complete archaeological excavation in London, which looks at Roman wells, Roman wharves, just Roman timber, Roman machinery, and all the rest of it. I've got to find that report. I don't exactly know where it is, but that's what we're going to do. And we're going to be, oh yeah, one of the gang last night was fascinated on me finding archaeological evidence of a Roman abattoir in Britain. They've got strange ideas on a Tuesday, hence you're on a Wednesday. But let's just crack on. So I one of the things I asked myself is Londinium, the fort at Londinium. So we move away from this temple, not the temple, this is Norman Castle, but underneath is a temple. We move away from this piece of basically Roman material. Oh yeah, there's a point to this. Sorry, there is a point. Right. So I may say that there are lots of Roman stone sites in Britain, right? But very, very few of them, other than the mayor at Leicester, other than the Roman bathhouse at Ravensglass and a few other examples on the walls at Caerwent and so on. Very few sets of Roman remains are more than 2 or 3 meters above ground level, right? But what constitutes a set of Roman remains? You could argue that this is a set of Roman remains because it's all made out of Roman material, but it was not constructed. The fabric is Roman, but is not actually built in the Roman period. So that's the thing. Yeah. So I wanted to make that point. So we got Brinksworth, for example, in Northamptonshire, which is basically all Roman material, but that's an Anglo-Saxon site. So I just wanted to make that point, just sort of fleetingly. So one of the things that we think about with Roman Londinium is more so on the angle that we've got the civilian capital. And we very rarely think about the military repercussions of Londinium. So it's too thin jar that the original remains of Roman occupation in Londinium are associated with the Roman military fort. But that's not coming around until about AD 45. So obviously I had this discussion. But this is an interesting point for us all. Some of the earliest stone remains in Roman era Britain are in Colchester, and they don't date from AD 45. They don't date from AD 44. Stone remains in Roman Colchester dating to AD 43, precisely the year of the Roman invasion of Claudius of Britain. And then somebody asked me last night, they said, hang on a minute, Carl, right? How is it we've already got stone buildings being constructed smack within days of the Roman invasion of Britain? And the answer is that they were probably already doing stuff in Colchester before AD 43. That's it. We don't need to evidence any more about that. So guarding Londinium, back to Londinium. So we've got 2 places we're talking about. We'll interchange between Colchester and Londinium today. So guarding Londinium, the Roman fort and the archaeology beneath modern London. Now, for me, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it that there's a reason why I don't like Alice Roberts, is because she's very anti. She's very anti Christianity, and she's very anti sort of anything to do with early religion in Britain, right? Which really upsets me, right? And so I'm going to say this. I was over the moon to see that over Easter there was the Passion of the Christ, which was attended by tens of thousands of people in Trafalgar Square in London. And obviously that's an event that occurred in the Roman era. So I thought I'd mention that. And somebody said, oh, wouldn't it have been great if you'd filmed this? And I said, yeah, it would have been great. And I said, also at the same time, I would have taken the time. This is the point. I would have taken the time to wander around London and visit all the sets of Roman remains in London, but I'd need to plan it precisely first. So we're starting off with these geysers in front of us. Now, they're obviously portraying sort of earlier Roman military uniforms. However, if these may have been auxiliaries, and these could have been the same auxiliaries that were responsible for manning the Roman fort in Londinium. So it gives you a bit of a backdrop, it gives you a bit of an idea. So let's crack on with a few other images. So what's really of interest to us is not sort of Southwark, it's Old Gate 2. There's Old Gate over there, and there's Old Gate 2, which was by the amphitheatre. Now, as I'm going through paperwork, and I'm burning lots of paperwork because I've got to get through it all. But I'm hopefully going to come across a press cutting, which is from about 1985, which is a press cutting that I took out of a newspaper when I was 10 about the archaeological excavations at the Guildhall, where the amphitheatre is, just where the T is on the amphitheatre, right? And it was great. It was great. Actually, the excavations were more or less there, right, in 1985 at the amphitheatre. And it's a great piece, and it really, I thought, that's great. That's why I want to be an archaeologist, right? That was when I was 10. So going back to this. So beneath this line, beneath the glass towers and traffic of modern London, lies a start again. Beneath the glass towers and traffic of modern London lies a hidden military installation. And there it is, where it says Cripplegate. A Roman fort built not precisely in stone at the beginning of the city, but at moments of crisis. So what we mean by that, right? When I say in stone, it was originally built in earth and ditches, right? The ditches were probably around the fort to actually drain, to keep it from flooding, basically. But it was an earthen fort, but basically into the 100s by at least 115, maybe in the reign of Trajan, going to the reign of Hadrian by 120, is made out of stone, and the walls are colossal. They really are. And just over on where it says on the left hand side, I don't know if I can draw on this, where it says gate there and fort, that side there, just on the outside there, that's where the Museum of London is. And it's really interesting that, because the Museum of London's got actually archaeological remains in its basement, so it's great. I love it. And sort of outside is brilliant. So the thing is this is really, really different. The fort in Londinium is really, really different. And the reason why the fort in Londinium is really, really different is that it remained having an important Roman military garrison from very early on, all the way into the 400s, because in a way, Londinium was the emboldened embodiment of Rome. Even though Rome had a population of 1 million, and probably the population of Londinium was no more than about 20,000, it worked more as a governor's guard, about 500 auxiliary troops. And one thing that we can gauge from that, this military detachment which was associated with Londinium, is that they changed on a regular basis. So when they've excavated, the fort, they've actually found evidence of lots of different garrisons and lots of different equipment, which would constantly rotate. So by rotating a garrison from different areas of the Roman Empire and Britain, right, you're sort of keeping them sharp. There's nothing like having a group of men who just think, oh, we'll go out and sort of sleep with the prostitutes, and we'll have a bit of fun, and we'll sort of get to know people and whatever. So when they got to that stage, you put another garrison in. So this, just one quick thing, just sort of looking at this. So we've got baths there. I think that's I get confused which one is Billingsgate, but there's these two baths marked on the map. You can actually see lots of wall around here, lots of the Roman wall. You can actually see in car parks. Very interesting. I've done I've done videos of bits of Roman wall in car parks. So you go into a car park, park your car, and there's a bit of Roman road over there, a Roman road, Roman wall, right? And I think in one car park there's also a bathhouse. So there's about 20 sets of Roman remains in London, stone Roman remains. I kid you not, and it's great because. So if I ever had a full day in London, mind you, I wouldn't want to go to London, but that's life. But if I'm ever acting in London and I've got a spare day, I'm just going to say, right, I'm just going to spend a day seeing the Roman remains, right, walk the whole thing. I'd love to do it. But let's just move on. So one thing I'm going to say, right, from what I've told you last week, the archaeology in Londinium, I could just, and I know this is going to sound odd, I could just do the archaeology of Londinium only, and that would give you a full overview of Roman occupation in Britain. It would give you the full picture, because in Londinium, what we have evidence of tablets, wooden tablets. We've got some of the best wooden material surviving from Roman era Britain in Londinium. We've got some of the remains of the best bits of wall in Londinium. We've got some really nice baths in Londinium. We've got some really nice mosaics. So if I just did Londinium just to tell you about Roman Britain, it probably would give you a nice overview. And actually, Roman London was actually the mint as well, the mint for the province. So it's something that we need to visit a few times. And again, being the capital of this province, it tells so many things. And what we've got this sort of like typical map of Roman era Britain, with the road network, with the river network and all the rest of it. And we're thinking, okay, why is Karl showing this? But Londinium is a microcosm of everything which is on here. And it's findable and it's doable. So Londinium, let's go back to this. So what we've got, we did show you this last week. And one thing that I've said before is in regards to walls. It's very likely that most of the wall that is surviving in bits that you can see around the capital today was built probably roughly around AD 200. It was being put in place by about AD 100-ish, 120, 130, 140. But the fort itself, that is the subject of what we're doing today, which is over there, had a wall around it completely by AD 120. It was very important to keep that going. So that answers the question, why would you build a fort inside your own city? So Londinium, the commercial hub. And the other thing as well as with Londinium, it's different from everywhere else in the province. In that, when I say everywhere else, that's not exactly true. I can't exactly say that that's a completely true statement. But in regards to the big sort of conurbations, this starts more or less completely new. There is some Iron Age stuff. It's not like Verulamium, which is associated with Catavalani. It's not like Glevum, which is associated with local tribes there. It's a completely new foundation. So when you think about the fort, it's as well, the fort itself is there, and there's a continual strategic interventionary thinking behind having the military fort there. So when all the military has left Britain, it's likely that some of the most latest garrisons in Britain, if you want to go on the list, is Oswald along Hadrian's Wall, about 430. We could look at Cardiff, maybe into about 420s, 430. The fort in Londinium is pretty in that ilk as well. So when everything else is falling down in the Roman world, this is still there. So when we see and we get this sort of connection with this Claudian city, because that's what it is. It's in complete contrast to Colchester. Doesn't have a temple associated with Claudius. It's a practical locality, because that bridge there is a fording area. It's probably the most shallowest area of which is closest to the mouth. And then obviously you go a bit further, it gets deeper water. So this is, you know, both sides you've got deep waters. This is probably the best place. And then obviously once they built the bridge, they could then control this position that we were looking at last week. So we don't really need to mention that. One of my people last night, who's Andy, he's a Coast Guard who used to live in London. He surprised me last night because he saves people from the muds of the Duddon estuary and Morecambe Bay and stuff. And he said that actually on a low tide, you can actually still walk across the River Thames. I kid you not. With all the narrowing of the River Thames to make it deep, apparently, in a really low tide, you can actually still walk across the River Thames. He said he wouldn't try it, but apparently you can. So we're thinking about the city again as we did last week. We're thinking rapid growth after AD 47, after that initial AD 45. We know this from the documents that we've found, the tablets, the wooden tablets, and the port on the Thames. And it's in other words, a place of connectivity. It's a place of water and water travel, water trade, connectivity, thread all the way down the River Thames, the Thames. And obviously the road network and Watling Street and all these gubbins that seem to sort of add into sort of former routeways or new routeways like Watling Street. So this is the place to be at. And one other thing as well is that is not really to be seen in documentation, right? It's the idea that there's a third way of communication. The Romans actually had signal stations. They could send messages from London all the way through to the Hadrian's Wall, using a system of torches, right, which would be lit to send messages up and down the country. And I kid you not, that happens. It is, as an archaeologist, we see signal stations all the way up through to Scunthorpe, up to the Northumberland coastline, right? We don't know where all these signal stations were, but when you talk about communication, probably the best way to get communication up and down the country is this network of signal stations. So you can get a message from Hadrian's Wall down to here. You can get a message from here to up there. I don't know how long it would take. I don't know how long a message would take, but I'm sure it could be done quite rapidly within the space of I don't know. Bill, you're the engineer, right? I don't know if this is in your category. Obviously, the distance between Londinium and Hadrian's Wall is going to be roughly about 250 miles, right? If you had regular signal stations at regular intervals of, say, I don't know, 5 miles, how long would it take to get a message from London to Hadrian's Wall?
By signaling, you mean?
By signaling, yeah.
Well, so look. It all depends
on the weather. Yeah, on the weather, yeah.
I'm echoing myself. It all depends. The speed each station would have been preferably located higher ground. And there's not much of that until you get to the caveats. So difficult to say. I would guess a day or so is a little of that.
How long did you reckon?
A few days.
What, to get a signal from London to Hadrian's Wall?
Well, if you a line outside, but Carl,
yeah, I don't know what that is. But yeah.
If you got a line outside, which you need to have, surely if you start your signal off, however that will be, whatever the method is, you could see that at the next station, 5 miles, and if you're old man, it could be quite interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a couple of hours rather than a few days, but that's me.
Okay, yeah, but that would be short period. I would have thought.
Okay, that's fair enough. Fair enough. I thought I'd chuck that in there. So when you're talking about Londinium, you're talking about sort of a centre of communication. So you've got water, you've got road, and you've got this network.
Yes.
So anyway, but back to this. So one of the things that we're doing, then we're looking at Londinium, is that the fort itself really starts to come into play in the Boudiccan revolt. And there's one thing that I'm really curious of. I'm really curious of one point. So if we go to this map, so if we go from east to west, sort of from Clevham all the way over to Camel and Junum, so by the Boudiccan revolt, this was really well settled, right? Now there's a point to this, right? Now so what we've got down in Exeter, we've got the 2nd Augusta Legion, which Isca Exeter. So by AD 55, right, Isca has actually moved up to Usk for basically a matter of a few 5 years, right? So basically we've got Usk where there's the military base of the 2nd Augusta Legion. And then eventually it moves to Killeen, right? Now, and then eventually the Roman 2nd Augusta Legion, by hook or by crook, ends up at Hadrian's Wall. Now, the point is with all of this that if you're moving the Legion from Exeter to Usk, it clearly tells you between AD 43 and an AD 55 that the whole area has been pacified. You don't need a military, right? That's what that tells me as a military thinking person. There's no need for the Roman legions to be in Exeter. And actually, I was reading some research yesterday, and it actually said that some of the earliest military evidence in Britain was not only in the likes of Colchester, was actually at Exeter, right? And that's really interesting. So back to my point. The point is, right, is that I've always believed this, that the resistance of the local tribes to the Roman era conquests, particularly to AD 59, just before Boudica, most of the tribes were quite not easy to conquer. They were quite sort of, right, okay, you're here, we'll trade with you. That's it. There's very little evidence of resistance. I keep saying this. People talk about Caraticus and all these things, right? And there's no evidence of there's no evidence for battles or fighting. It's almost as if it's like a folklore thing. But the archaeology tells us what I've just said, that if all this Caraticus stuff is real, why is the military continually moving north and moving all their bases south? Because they're no longer needed. But on the back of this, when we think about the fort at Londinium, that's very different. So whereas Isca is completely abandoned by roughly just around the AD 120s in the archaeology, get the history in the archaeology, right? It's abandoned. The massive Roman military base of which could hold about 4,500 to 5,000 men, right? Plus support, right? They all move up to Hadrian's Wall. But the Roman military fort at Londinium is basically being strengthened, and it's there for another 300 years after that point. And the only massive military base that we've actually got in South Wales that continues is not Usk, is not Killeen, is actually Cardiff, which actually is the same timeline as this site. Again, kid you not. So again, thinking about this archaeology, thinking about understanding this. So when we think about the word destroyed during the Boudicca revolt, so what we could basically say, I like this. I think this is a cover of a book somewhere on archaeology of the City of London, and I think right, okay, I like this. Right, so what you've got sort of a cross section of the archaeology. Now, there's 2 points to this. The first point is this: the lots of the area south of the Bloomsburg building, the Temple of Mithras, is reclaimed, right? A big area, right, going all the way. So it's constantly being reclaimed, right? It's sort of you've got wharf, you've got polder dikes, and then you fill it in, and you claim that area, you filled it with crap, and then so constantly wooden material is being covered and filled in, right? Now, directly above that, not really shown on here, but directly above that would have been a thick black layer, which would be the AD 60. But secondly, just because you find a big thick black layer across Londinium, it doesn't mean to say it dates from AD 60. It's the same as anywhere, because across Roman archaeology, we call terra preta, we talk about the black earth layer, right? Which is actually the same term that we actually use for the black earth layer in the Amazon basin. But anyway, so terra preta, so black earth, and so Boudica didn't go everywhere in Britain. She just did that sort of eastern bit. So you actually see this black earth layer on lots of Roman sites. So it's an ending layer, because the Romans used a lot of timber in their buildings. Lots of buildings were just ceremonially set alight before they moved on, just like a gypsy caravan, right? Richard knows what I'm on about. So when an archaeologist said, "Oh, on the news, oh, we found the black earth layer across London," it's obviously evidence of Boudica. No, it could be a number of times that the black earth dates from, right? And so if you're talking about the Roman period, it could be several times that you get a black earth layer, right? We don't know all the history about Londinium either. We really don't. We really don't. So we've got several black earth layers across Londinium. But we've also got other layers of black earth across Londinium. So we could basically say we've got the Saxon layers, we've got these layers being spread, we've got various other layers that we've got various sort of different sort of contexts. And obviously the big black layer is the layer is just associated with the Great Fire of London 1666. But there's one danger with the black layer, the Fire of London. There's not much of it, because Wren just had the whole city just flattened, right? Just all shifted away. So when we think about context in archaeology, it's not all from one moment in time, this black earth layer. So I thought I'd make that clear. But with Colchester, it's specifically specific. That black earth layer is definitely a black earth layer. It's definitely from Boudica. But then you've got building layers, and you've got another black earth layer directly on top, and then you've got the medieval stuff. So when this Boudican thing happened, it's in a way they just basically said, right, we're going to rebuild the city, and it's going to be built in stone, right? We're going to start thinking about walls, and we're going to start thinking about really different things in Londinium, right? And again, the city of Colchester, as the provincial capital, moved to Londinium. And we'll talk about that when we get to Colchester, because in Colchester, what we're talking about with Colchester is that for a while, Colchester took a time for people to trust in Rome again. And what we mean by that is twofold. And I will just talk about this gently now. Back to what I just said earlier on, it seems that the Roman military is moving out, the area is pacified, people feel safe, right? And the people feel safe because they are the local people. They know these local people are not going to be attacked by other local people who don't like them, because we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, right? Something happened at the time of Boudica to turn the people against the people. And one thing that's missing, right? When we talk about Boudica going to Colchester and Londinium and Verulamium, a few other places, right? We talk about the most historians talk about Boudica's rebellion going after the Romans. Well, most of the people in in the likes of Londinium weren't Roman. They were actually local people. Most of the people in Verulamium were actually local people. A big chunk of the people in Camel and Junum that were killed, Colchester, were local people, right? So it took for some overnight, the sense of being secure was lost. And the reason why you don't have a big military in East Anglia like Camel and Junum is because they didn't need it. The military had just moved out because they thought, right, everything's fine. Right, everything was fine. So it's a really, really important point, that. So you've got, so when you're, the strange thing, when they're rebuilding the city after AD 60, they're thinking about the fort, right? But they're not really building the fort out of stone yet, right? Hang on a minute. There it is, the fort yet. You know, they're not, it takes them a while. The rest of the city is building. It takes them a while. And the other thing, the weird thing, 2 points as well. I said there was 2 points. Camel and Junum, people just didn't want to move back there. They just didn't. It took them probably several generations. So what was happening when they're rebuilding Camel and Junum, not as rapidly as London, when they're rebuilding Camel and Junum, right? What is seemingly happening is that they're building a structure and they're just thinking, right, okay, is everything all right? Okay, we haven't been attacked in a week, right? Well, we're not going to be attacked, you know. So that they're sort of, as they're building a ditch and sort of reinstating the defences around Camel and Junum, they're actually farming within the city. It takes people a while to sort of trust what's going on, and that is really important. So if we go back to obviously this rebuilding, this sort of sense of place, this sort of sense of connection, and what we've got them. You can see Bill, early form of pile driving. There you go, a big lead chock there, being lifted up on a crane and just banged into the ground, and you get these piles in there quite rapidly, right? There you go, job done. And obviously this is what they're doing. So this constantly building this Londinium, again moving from Camel and Junum to Londinium. So this is obviously a lot later. This is probably more in the likes of the 150s, probably up to 200. I'm very suspicious of these types of illustrations when they say they're from the 120s. I'm thinking more that they're probably a bit later. But this is that sort of gateway. So Watling Street across there, going through the city, all these buildings. And one thing that is clear, if you can look, there's within the area of Londinium, so obviously the walls over on the far side, or the defences on the far side, there's lots of green stuff. And one thing that we do know is that Kai Went's a good example of this. I'll tell you about Kai Went. When archaeologists have excavated the Kai Went, I've excavated the Kai Went, and I'm yet to produce my archaeological report on that, which I'll discuss in a few moments, and why it's not been completed for quite some time, but I've got to do it. When archaeologists have excavated the Kai Went, they've had whole areas where there's nothing. So you've got this wall, and in areas there's nothing, right? So they built the wall around an area where it was like the road network was laid out, and the Romans just didn't occupy all the city of Kai Went. If you can call it a city, it's more like a town of a couple of thousand people. And it's the same with Londinium. This is endemic in the Roman period across Britain, right? Forget, other than Caliver Arturatum and maybe Eberacum York and maybe Lindum, right? Viraconium Roxeter in Shropshire, right? That's not all fully occupied, right? And again, we've got Kenchurch, Hereford. That's not all fully occupied either. You've got these walls built, and it's like that's what's happening. It's not. It's almost as if Rome is saying, "We got it, boys. We got Rome," and people are saying, "Oh, we'll just stay on the farms. I'll come into the city. We'll stay on the farms, right? We'll stay on the farms." So when Londinium eventually, like most other Roman era cities in Britain, other than say Carlisle or Carlisle itself. Most of them went out of operation. Oh yeah, Viraconium, right? Viraconium, Caerwent, and the likes of Carlisle. But most cities like Cirencester, Caniva Aspartum, Calendunum, Londinium just fell out of use sometime in the 400s, 430s, 440s, right? And it's that very thing that people didn't really gel to towns. They didn't really connect with towns because at the end of the day, lots of people in Britain, like the countryside. Lots of us don't like towns and cities. I hate towns and cities. That's me. I'm part gypsy. I can't really stay in a city. But it's like that mindset, and we actually see that in the archaeology. So the archaeology speaking for how people were and how people saw themselves. Whenever you think about the likes of Londinium, be very careful with reconstructions. This is a reconstruction of the basilica that they built in Londinium, but this is totally wrong, because this sort of thinks, oh right, this is like an illustration of what the basilica in Londinium looked like, basically AD 500. Well, no, because the basilica was already demolished in the AD 340s, right? Because I'll show you the evidence. So what we've got really with Londinium is it's a bit of a mess when we get to AD 500, because people have demolished most of the stuff and actually used it as building material to strengthen the walls. So that's what they're doing, and that's the thing. That is the thing. When you talk about Roman era Britain, I get really upset sometimes about the gateways that were still standing in sort of Exeter and some in York and London and stuff. Roman gateways still standing in the 1750s, and we demolished them, right? And then you start. Oh, Lincoln's another example. But mind you, they've got the Newport Gate in Lincoln, so they've got one gateway there. But when you think, oh, we've destroyed so much of the Roman archaeology, but the Romans destroyed so much of the archaeology for building material. It's in what you see in some of the Roman walls around Britain. You actually see bits of marble, not just tile and stone. You see all sorts of stuff, because and you see this with Richborough as well, that the great sort of arch in Richborough was demolished in the Roman period to strengthen the walls around Richborough, the marble and all that stuff, So that's an example of it in sort of Londinium, right? Because we can, in some of the walls over by Tower of London, that some of that material comes from the basilica, which was demolished in the Roman era. Job done. When we're thinking about this, that's somebody else actually made a comment online, which is great. I haven't had comments online for a while, but I'll read this comment in a moment. So, actually, this ties in with this, Carl, because there is no archaeology. It doesn't mean the history is wrong, right? I see that. That's a really interesting point, but because as I'm an archaeologist, not a historian, I tendency to look at the archaeology and think, if the archaeology doesn't tell a story, then maybe we can question the history. I think that's what I'm actually looking at. But obviously, I think this image, I chucked this in there. This is reading sort of, in that mud that we see all across London, and you see lots of things. If you did an X-ray of the mud and stuff, you see all these black boys sticking out, all these timbers and stuff. But anyway, back to the fort. Let's go back to the fort, right? And our friend online, he's called Black Patches Dog. He's been watching my stuff for quite some time. So back to this military garrison, thinking about this, and we'll look at a bit of a wall now. And the other thing as well is with this military garrison in London, it's a permanent military garrison. So there's the stuff is built out of stone, right? And where you got these sort of military garrison in the likes of Killeen, which is like a few stone footings and the rest of it timber, right? Well, what you're actually seeing with permanent forts is you're actually finding stone buildings like the stone buildings at Bird Oswald, right? They're permanent stone buildings rather than timber buildings, because stone buildings last longer than timber buildings, and if you've got timber buildings, there's a risk of fire, right? As we all know. Oh, can I give you an interesting fact, right? At Cosmester Medieval Village, we've got Roman remains at Cosmester Medieval Village. If you didn't know, because the Medieval Village was actually built on an original Roman era settlement, right? And and there's another bit of a story with that. When I was playing with the children at a play park at Cosmeston, I was just watching them, and I was looking down at the mud on the ground, and I was picking up Roman pottery, because they'd gathered up a load of clay and they decided to dump it where this play park was. So I thought I'd mention that. But with all of this, right, you're seeing this sort of these buildings. And oh yeah, back to Cosmeston. Sorry, I got off on one. So the reason why all the buildings at Cosmeston Medieval Village are made of stone, right, is because of the fire risk. No buildings in South Wales in the medieval period were built like the ones at Cosmeston Medieval Village. There were 3 or 4 courses of stonework, and the rest of it was made of wattle and daub and timber, crux frame structures, right? But that's the medieval period. So back to the Roman period, right? These buildings at the garrison weren't made of several layers of stone and timber. They were made of stone and sort of a timber roof. That's the big difference. So military garrison, this is permanent. This doesn't move. This doesn't move off the board. This is going to be in stone for the next 300 plus years. A bit like Cardiff, but it stays in one place. The fort at Cardiff moves so many times, it's like working out where it was at any stage. But back to this. So 3 leading theories why this fort is permanent, Londinium, and why it's definitely permanent, right? Not like, you know, Chester or Lincoln or anything like that's permanent, right? The garrison inside the city maintaining order, not just in Londinium, but across the Roman province. Administrative shift, possible link to provisional governance. Now, that's really important. We'll go on to the third one in a moment, right? And I've got to tell you something about karl-james, which is the reason why I haven't done the report yet. So we'll tell you about this, that Londinium itself, and you can see around it, it's not all full of buildings and stuff, and that's what it would have looked like, you know, not all buildings in Londinium, as I've already explained. So thinking of Londinium as a miniature Rome, right? Much smaller version than Rome, but in Rome it's got its own army, it's got its own Praetorian Guard, and that's actually based within the city of Rome itself. So this governor would have been the emboldened embodiment of the Roman emperor, but in Britain, right? He was the edicts of the Roman emperor. He was the mouthpiece of the Roman emperor. And to be that, he needs his own army. And this is exactly what this is in Londinium. To control, you need this base. So Londinium represents Rome, and the governor represents the emperor. And the emperor having an army in Rome, the governor here representing the emperor also needs his own army, and this is one of the ways of looking at this. And the other point that we can say is that the third point is the security fears, and having a military garrison permanent, but it would evolve. So they would bring in a garrison from, say, I don't know, up north, and they would send this garrison up north. Or they would then move this garrison here from Cardiff to whatever. The garrison would move around, right? It's all about making sure that you can keep control and keep some variety of garrisons. And there's nothing like having a horrible group of men based here, and they're always horrible to the local people. So if you're moving them away and putting another garrison in, they might be friendly with the local people because they know some of the local people. So it's really important that so the key line here is that the fort appears not in stone at the beginning of the birth of Londinium, because they didn't think it was going to be permanent. So it was made of earth and timber, right? But it eventually become made of stone, definitely there by AD 120. The fort appears, and it's there. It embodies the imperial idea. And somebody else said as well that the fort is there because it's a way of Rome dealing with worries, right? It's a way of Rome coping with worries, right? And again, it starts to appear again. There's originally a Claudian earthen fort, so you're talking about AD 45, and then laissez-faire, and then there's not enough garrison here at the time of Boudica, so okay, it's a good idea to have it. So Boudica never happens again. This is going to be here to keep the city of Londinium safe for the next 300 years, and it's exactly what that is. We don't have any other evidence against that. So there's a bit of the wall, and that's not a good image of the wall, because looking at it from the Museum of London side, it looks a lot more impressive. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story. When I was excavating a bit of Roman wall at Caerwent, and actually had a license from Cadw at the time. Don't ask how, but I did. And so I was excavating the car park of the I think the pub is actually owned by the same guy still. Anyway, I did an excavation on the wall, and I thought, right, okay, we found a first Roman coin I'd ever found, and this was in 1997, right? First Roman coin I'd ever found. And I thought, brilliant. So I brought that back to Barry, and I thought, right, I've got a press reporter coming up the next day, right, when we go there. So I thought I'd take the Roman coin with me, and I felt there's something unlucky with it, right? So anyway, on the way back that day, all the artifacts in the back of the car as we were driving back, both of the tires on the car blew on the motorway. The car turned over, and all the Roman artifacts were spread over the road, except for this one coin that I was holding whilst my head was scraping along the motorway. So I lost my scalp heading along the motorway, and this Roman coin. So when I do the report, the coin's never been washed because it's still got my blood on it. I thought I'd mention that. Wasn't that a good story, Bill? Right, okay then. So back to this. And naturally, when I do that excavation report, I will just do a whole session on it, and I'll have all the images of the artifacts. So I'm actually going to be starting work on some of that soon as well. So the one thing about this, you can clearly see that when I'm giving these presentations, to say that Roman fort doesn't look proper, does it? It's just sort of like it's sort of like bent and twisty, but it's typical sort of off square, slightly rectangular, off playing card shaped fort. And I wanted to say that, like Cardiff Castle. And it's obviously got all the gates and towers. So one thing about this fort is meant to be independent of the city, and that's really important. Got to be independent of the city. It's got to have its own governance, and this is exactly what's going on. So again, looking at that wall, I actually prefer that. Doesn't that look absolutely unbelievable? Look at that. I tell you what, right? That's orgasmic, and that is the real McCoy. Except when I'm saying that's the real McCoy, is that over time there's been bits added to it, but it's contemporary with the periods of build. Unlike when you see something like Caerphilly Castle, right, which is not Roman at all, it's medieval. But all the outside dress stone at Caerphilly Castle was completely added in the 1870s, 1880s, right? So what's that got to do with anything? The point is that this isn't reconstructed. The other point is if you look at the walls of Cardiff Castle, the same guy who put all the new cladding stone on the outside of Caerphilly decided to do something that really pleased me to bits with Cardiff Castle, right? So when William Burgess and the third Marquis of Bute is actually doing the work of Cardiff Castle from the late 1870s into the 1880s. So what they decide is that, right, people are going to know what the Roman stuff is and what the modern stuff is by what we're going to do. And what they did, they decided to use red Rada sandstone to outline the Roman stone at Cardiff Castle. So you'll always know where the Roman stuff it starts and where the modern stuff starts. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I love the way they did that. And I used to tell people about that when I used to work for a company in Cardiff doing tour guides around Cardiff called Guide Friday. But one thing that you can clearly see here is that this is Roman masonry. Stone, string course brick going through the wall, stone, string course brick going through the wall, stone, string course brick going through the wall. And then it starts to get a little bit mixed as we go up. But I feel that oh, look at that. I feel that is so absolutely amazing. Oh, it's like touchy, you know. But this is by the Museum of London, this is. And there are other bits like this in London, sort of on the eastern side of the city. But this is actually not the city wall, right? This is actually the fort wall. So they meant business with the fort wall. I think the next image is, in fact, yeah, I'm loving this one. So this next image is associated with, so you've got that sort of grey thing in the middle, right, which hasn't really been excavated. That's known as the Principia headquarters, administrative centre. In there, if they ever excavate it, right, in that area, they will actually find a strong room. And in that strong room, they used to hold the Roman standards. So you can imagine that that would be, just imagine, right, the original, you know, there'd be just think, if they had not cleaned that, you know, the room underneath that sort of area, which is like a little sort of strong room, right? If they never cleared that out when they left the fort, there would be evidence of over the 300 years that was there. You know, just think, there'd be little bits hidden there and stuff. It'd be absolutely great. That's where every auxiliary unit that stayed there, and probably a couple of legionary units that stayed here, put their legionary standards underneath that sort of Principia, underneath that headquarters in the middle. So then what we've obviously got these stone barracks here. Now, I mentioned last week about Lougher, did I not? And I mentioned about when you go over the Lougher Bridge, the old Lougher Bridge, not the new. Oh, hang on a minute. The old. Yeah, when you. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, when they built the new Lougher Bridge, they had to do archaeological work there. So when you go over the old Lougher Bridge, right? If you look underneath where the new Lougher Bridge is, that's where the Lacarium used to be, the Roman Lougher, right? And they were all timber, right? So when they excavated it, they excavated all the timber footings for it, right? But these were stone, and that's the difference. That's the difference, because this is permanent. So again, thinking about these barracks, these long rectangular buildings, and this is evidence of the soldier units, probably about 500 men max. And over on the right there, I think over on the right, you might have some of the granaries. Not exactly sure the translation of this, but obviously all this indicates long-term occupation of individual units. So the road, they know about the road going around the outside. They've got little bits of evidence of the road going around the outside, the Principius, and the Via Praetoria as well, that goes through the fort. And excavating this fort as well, what we do have is that we've got the evidence that's being found here, the long-term pottery, the various phases, animal bones and diet, military equipment fragments. All this have been found at the site. But as you can appreciate, the archaeologists have only probably excavated 1/6 of this site. So there's still a lot to find. And, you know, it's all game, basically. So any work that they need in this area will probably find a little bit more. And obviously working here, lots of tiles, equipment fragments, and building materials stamped by the units. Now that for me is absolutely fascinating. And maybe I'd like to come back one day and talk about this fort, and maybe think about the Roman military units that served here. That would be absolutely brilliant. So it's not temporary, it's a permanent garrison base. It's the place that the Romans wanted to say that we are here. So this absolutely massive wall, toweringly huge wall. So it's probably likely as well that the fort wall was taller than the civilian wall going around, because this is the last place, this is the last stronghold, and this is naturally the place, as I keep saying, that held out for the 300 years that the Roman military and the Roman era were actually in control of the city. Can I just let a cat in a minute? 1 second. Come on. Hang on. The door's open. Right. Crack on, folks. So let's move on to a few other images, and we'll go on to a little bit of a break. So we're looking at that there. So the southeast corner of there's the older gate a bit further on. There's two older gates in London. So what we've got is, you can see there 1985 walls recorded, right? And what we've got, this is under the Guildhall. So if you go into the crypt at the Guildhall, you can actually see a bit of wall that's been recorded. So that's absolutely great. And I do believe that the bits of wall recorded in 1985 are actually visible as well. I'm sure I've seen an image, or they're outlined in the stone and whatever. But this is critically important. It's like elliptical. It's very much like the one at Killeen. Slightly not like the one at Chester, but obviously, you know, all of these are sort of military built. Well, this is military built in Londinium, associated with the fort, and the one at Chester is military built. But I've got my own thoughts at the one at Killeen, but that's for another day. But naturally, you've got these amphitheaters. So again, what we've got is that when we think about this, we think about this bit. So the southern part of the screen, that's actually on the city side, the civilian city side, and it's sort of strengthened the northwest corner. There's something in that as well. When we think about building walls, that is another point. When we think about building walls around the city, it means that the city becomes extremely wealthy. And I would say that Londinian's one of the only consistent points of city sites in Britain that probably regularly maintains the road network. So lots of the civilian domestic road network that already existed, obviously that continues. Roman military road networks across Britain. So only the big ones like Watling Street going south to north, and so you've got Fosse Way from sort of east to west, and you've got these different, and you've got Ermine Street as well. Those big ones were maintained, but the smaller ones weren't. But any roads coming in and out of Londinium probably were maintained, because the wall itself around Londinium and all the other structures in Londinium shows of the city's prosperity, and then the wall itself, economic protection, political statement of strength, and maybe the wall itself is thinking that as you go into 200-300s, things outside the Roman world are getting a little bit unstable, so you need this wall to be constructed. So I think on that note, what I might do is I might take a break. And the reason why, if we take a 10-minute break, I've got to fondle my sheep, because we've got 4 little lambs. I've got to make sure that they're moved. So I've got to put the light on as well, because I'm in the dark. So I'm going to put the light on now. And what we're going to do, we're going to go off this now, and we're going to go on to Bill. And we're going to stop that. So Bill, you can't see me because I've got to put the light on. So Bill, anything you want to tell us?
Yeah, you've thrown a lot of dates around about the invasion, Carl. I would have thought as soon as they arrived, they would have known in advance that their main base would be Londinium. All the legions and all resources would have gone quickly to Londinium and settled there, and for the next 5-10 years actually built the town. I would have thought, before they expanded out the other ones. They didn't, did they?
They didn't. So as I was saying last week, so what we've got, there's this thing about Colchester, Camel and Junum. It's like already there. It's like a spiritual home. It's like the temple. It's like, you know, there's lots of people who are like pro-Roman already in Colchester, right? There's nothing Londinium at all, right? So it takes until about AD 45 that they're actually really starting to do something at Londinium, and we know that their own writings and stuff that they're really starting to get on with Londinium by about AD 47. But in the same time, when we look at Exeter, we look at Isca and Exeter, things are kicking off down there in sort of building things. So Londinium, it's only a matter of a few years, but other places are starting to build and grow before Londinium, and then suddenly it's almost as if people started to think, hang on a minute, right? Londinium is more central. Camel and Junum isn't. It's a bit over there. St. Albans isn't really serviceable by a massive river like the River Thames, so it's not really in the place that it needs to be. So we've got to create a place, and so obviously the place where we could use is Londinium because of the river, and we can do something with the river, and the Walbrook is really important to the Roman plans in Londinium as well. So it all stems to looking at Londinium, but it wasn't automatic, Bill. It wasn't, and maybe. Yeah. Maybe if the Buddha can, let's just do a little bit of laissez-faire. Maybe if the Budokan thing never happened, right, there wouldn't be lots of walls and sort of military stuff down in the south. They would have thought, oh, we're okay, everything's fine, right? And that would have led disaster for future occasions, right? It's because of the Budokan rebellion they actually realized, hang on a minute, right, we can keep moving the troops north, but people are still a bit annoyed, right? And it might not be, Colchester was really vulnerable, right? It's a really vulnerable place. And, you know, it's probably not the best place to have a capital. So we're moving it to Londinium.
Okay, sounds logical, that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Right, okay then. Gophras.
Yeah, I was going to say about the river. That's probably why the growth of London, its proximity to the North Sea and Holland and northern Germany, big river. It's the obvious place to have a big capital, isn't it?
Wasn't initially, but it became the obvious place. So obviously, the Romans don't have our hindsight. They don't have, because let's just be a bit lazy. Colchester's already there. Let's just carry on with Colchester. But they must have started to think, like you've just said, that with the access to all these trading places, it seems the more plausible place, right? The more navigable place. And, you know, this is what they went for.
Okay.
And I don't obviously the waters and the what the problem is with Colchester, as we saw with the archaeology, that most of the harbors along that coastline were either clogged up with silt or washed away, right?
Yeah.
And obviously the Romans would have been told this. They would have thought, right, hang on a minute, there's been people in Colchester for the past 100 years, right? What's it exactly like? Oh, well, there's a harbour down there. It's silted up in the past 50 years. Well, that's going to be no good for us. The Romans were used to this. There's too many places in the Roman Empire where they built the city, and then the next thing, the city's miles away from where the water is because it's all silted up. Right. So Richard, anything from you, babes, before I fondle with my sheep?
Oh, very interesting.
Richard, can I just say something, right?
Yeah.
In the dark there, you're looking like you're a dodgy porn star magnate type thingy, and it's just like it's as dodgy as anything, but I'm going to take a break.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And Henry gives his love to everybody except for you, Richard. Anyway, we're going to be back soon.
I'm going to put the light on.
You fucking should. Fuck me. Right. Oh my.
Where are we? What is that?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I might have a banana as well.
Bloody nice.
Alright, look. I think so. I was going to do them one night to get a screwdriver on them. The no. I'll take them apart tomorrow and have a quick look.
Did you press the button?
Yeah. It's not clicking properly.
Yeah, I've done it. I'll go again then.
I'll they unscrew, I'll have a look tomorrow.
Strange, isn't it?
I'll have a look. I'll do something.
Wow, good clean. What is all that noise? Is somebody knocking the house down?
No, leave it for a bit. I've got to go to the post office with it.
Yeah. I'd wait till they've done it all.
Oh. This was right, okay. So we go there, and the three cards. Oh, right.
Can you hear me? Oh, you can hear me, Richard. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I can hear you.
I've got a minor issue to deal with, so I'm just going to come out of here. And I've been here for the past few minutes. So let's do that.
No, you haven't. Starting blank.
Right. Okay. Okay, we'll do that.
Oh,
Okay. Put that there.
no. Hmm.
Reclaim host. Right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Right. Okay.
You're vertical.
Right. This weird device that I'm wearing. Right. If I go any further away from the computer, it knocks off my mic. So I gotta come back off and I gotta come back on. Right. So anyway, sorry about the delay there. So
Carl, you are vertical. You're not horizontal.
I will get horizontal now, Bill.
We all like getting horizontal.
Yeah. My grandmother used to say it's better to. Anyway, let's just move on.
You're back normal now.
Right. Okay.
Carry on.
Did you say I'm back normal? I'm not. There's nothing normal about me.
Oh, you're not normal. No, the picture is.
Do you know what? I haven't told anyone this. I was actually a reporter for the Bar Industry News. And they basically said, go along, you get free food, free drink, right? And that was at the Penmark, the Penmark 6 Bells. It was brilliant.
Oh, right.
You know, I felt everything. All life was amazing. So anyway, stop yawning. Right. So this would have been the original envisagement of the likes of the fort. This would have been the Claudius form, right? An earthen bank and so on. But eventually, as we know, they've built the stone wall. So what we're talking about, the people who are actually based here at this fort with a massive wall, these were auxiliary troops, mainly not legionaries. And with this image, you can get an idea of the wall, the height of the wall. This is massively impressive. This is towering over the people inside the fort and the people outside the fort, i.e. in the city or outside the city. So we're talking about 500 troops. And thinking again about the archaeology, and this is the old gate, and it's saying this is there was 2 old gates anyway, so this is one of the old gates. And we're talking about the gates leading into the fort were actually quite impressive, as were the gateways leading into the city itself. Unfortunately, none of the true height and lengths and widths of the gateways to do with Londinium have actually survived, unfortunately, for the reasons that I've mentioned before. But we do have footings of these surviving. Now, nuancial, before we get onto the Colchester stuff, nuancial is that we do find that, as I've already said, that there's no overall name of any set auxiliary detachment here that's been here for a long period of time. There's loads of little ones, and it'd be good to actually get into that sort of research. Rotation of administrative use. Looking at this plan, obviously the flow of the Thamesis, the flow of the Thames. This is just sort of giving you an idea of what they knew in the early sort of 1800s. They had no idea about the fort then. But again, the sort of plan of the fort of the city walls is well known. And what's marked on there is something, the London Stone. We mentioned the London Stone last week, and obviously the London Stone was at the heart of the city and is still extremely important to the people's mindsets in regard to the city, the Roman city of Londinium. And when you do get to the Museum of London, it's not just a bit of wall that we've seen. There's lots of bits of walls, and there's actually a little bit of a bastion. Actually, when you look at this part of the wall, it's a bit of a mixture of wall from various periods, but obviously all that sort of brick stuff there is sort of reused Roman material. The footings there is actually Roman. This is another part of the wall, not all sort of the ilk that we've already seen, but obviously the base of a bastion there. So that's really, really interesting to actually get the bastion of the Roman fort. Now, this is rather interesting. What I'm going to do in the future, I'm going to pick out bits of the Roman city wall, and we're going to look at the artifacts. And one of the things that they're doing in London a lot more of is where they're actually finding Roman remains, like Billingsgate, like the Bloomsburg building, like this as well. What they're doing, they're excavating them. They're actually bringing them to the overall form of the building that's being erected, like this one at the Museum of London. And actually, they're displaying the artifacts associated with this excavation find, which is absolutely brilliant. I've got loads more images of this in another presentation, but we won't do that now. And obviously, we haven't got all night. But again, that's another bastion associated with the wall. Like most bastions associated with Roman city walls, they were added later. And that's clearly that what we've got at Caer Went. When we go to Caer Went, you've got the wall coming first, roughly around AD 300, and the bastions being added by AD 350. And this is exactly the same with Londinium. It's likely that most Roman cities in Britain, Roman era cities in Britain, the wall was actually built as show. But when they actually realized that they actually need bastions to support the wall to actually give it some more defensive role, they're sort of coming in about the 350s. And this is exactly what we're getting with the wall at Londinium. So by the early 400s, what we're finding is that the city actually starts to retract, and by probably about 420, 430, the Roman fort in London has actually has gone south. And Bill's talking, and I don't know who he's talking to, but it's doing my head in. But Bill, should I mute him, guys? Oh, for God's sake, why does he do this? Hang on, guys. So I got to come back. I got to mute him a minute. Hang on. Mute him. There. Bill, mute him. Good. Mute. Good. Excellent. We've muted him. Right. Let's get back to where we were. Right. Okay. There we go. I don't know why he does this. Very naughty man. So anyway, so back to where we were. Let's get back to the images. Now, this is really interesting. In effect, this is a little snippet, nothing to do with the fort. I thought I'd mention this. This is a whole talk in itself. Again, all of this stuff we're doing recently has been sort of overviews. One thing I want to say is that we know that the basilica itself was actually demolished. And how do we know that? It's quite easy. When they've actually excavated the basilica building, this is really recent image. What you can clearly see is at the top of the screen, right in the section, it's all like red rubble and stuff. And that red rubble and stuff has actually been dumped in at the time that they're actually demolishing the wall. It's not like this over here, because this over here has been a much later period where they've actually been excavating, and they're putting a pit in, right? And this is later. Right, the black stuff on that side is later, it's much later stuff. But this here, because it's the same sort of color and context, as they're demolishing the wall, they're putting all the plaster and all the crap into the hole. So this is how we can tell that the basilica is being demolished roughly around the 340s, and the material is actually being used for the London wall and the Tower Hill wall, which is associated with the Tower of London. So it's really important that. And we see this in the archaeology. Again, this is a talk in itself. And what they've done, they wanted to explore this bit of the basilica. So they've actually cut through this solid concrete wall to actually get into the archaeology. And that's how we know and we can understand what happened to the basilica. About this stage, we actually thought the basilica had actually continued in use all the way to the end of Roman era Britain, but it didn't. They decided to demolish it to use in the Tower Hill part of the Roman city wall. So all that stuff at the back. Hang on a minute, what's happened? Hang on, something's happened with my screen. All that stuff at the back there, with that image at the basilica was gone. Some of this stuff in the foreground was still there. with the sort of trading area. And that there is another section of this wall associated with the basilica. So that would have been sort of rendered over, it would have been richly painted, but we know that that's all gone by roughly about the 340s. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to Camel and Dunham quickly. We haven't got all day. I know Richard's got to leave at 9, but I'm just probably going until about 9:10, and that's it. So what we've got, just a sort of overview, just sort of closing comments, is that if you want to see Roman stuff, Museum of London. If you haven't got all day, Museum of London, you've got the City Wall, you've got loads of stuff in the Museum of London, mosaics and so on, plans and so on. That's the place to go. So this very powerful closing thing, that when we think about Londinium and we think about this important site, so the Roman fort of Londinium is not lost. It survives in fragments, embedded in the fragment of the Roman city around the Museum of London, a ghost garrison beneath London, you could say. So finally, moving away from London and sort of thinking about this type of archaeology, London was not just a place of trade like the Basilica and wealth. It was watched, controlled, and when necessary, defended from within, to defend from what was in, which represents the Roman world. So what we're going to do finally, we're going to pop over to the likes of Camel and Dunham and Colchester. And this will be a nice little one to sort of conclude today. It's just nice little bits of information. So we're going to go on to this. I just want to say that I used to be a member of the Colchester Archaeological Trust, and I used to get this really nice, colourful magazine sent to me on a regular basis. But my entire collection of Colchester archaeology magazines, which were really well illustrated, were water damaged. I didn't go through them, and I burnt the lot about 6 months ago. And now I'm regretting it, because I could have used it in these presentations. Silly me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the editions of current archaeology, and I'm sure there's lots of stuff in current archaeology which I can actually use. So that's going to be good. So Colchester Archaeological Trust was founded in 1963, but we'll come across them a lot. This is a bit of wall being examined, associated with the town centre excavations. And one of the things that the comparison with the Roman fort wall in Londinium is the Roman legionary fortress wall, and the Roman legionary fortress that existed in Camel and Dunham before it became a city, and then before the Boudiccan rebellion, because the 20th Valley of Vitrix Legion actually moved out of the likes of Colchester, and they headed up to Diva, Chester, and then they eventually headed up Eberacum, York, and then obviously you've got Hadrian's Wall. So looking at the archaeology, and there is the man himself, Sir Mortimer Wheeler, in the 1970s. So he's there in the 1970s. This is Sir Mortimer Wheeler, was the world profound expert on Londinium until a chap by the name of Crummy. So a Roman legionary fortress, large, and what he's looking at is mosaics, so in with all the stuff, this is sort of the mix of everything. So this was meant to be the permanent base of the 20th Valley of Vitrix Legion, but they didn't last there long. They were withdrawn by AD 49 to Chester. So they were there from AD 43 to AD 49. So it was a temporary permanent. It was made of timber, a little bit of stone, and more about that again. But this was the first permanent legionary fortress in Roman era Britain, and the Roman military base at the likes of Camel and Dunham predated the one at Londinium by about 3 years. So it's there. It was so well established that the stuff that we get is really telling us a story. So excavations throughout Colchester, this is near the castle, by the way, this stuff. Excavations throughout Colchester have revealed the layout of the legionary fortress, as well as the later rebuilding of the town after the Boudiccan revolt of AD 61. And by the way, Sir Mortimer Wheeler used to have a massive obsession with the name Boudica, Budig. And so the Lion's Walk excavations, this is a specific name for these excavations, underneath the site of the Lion's Walk shopping precinct, uncovered large amounts of archaeological material, including the early Roman fortress and its outer defences, as well as Roman street building, Anglo-Saxon stuff, medieval stuff, and so on, and statues of Lloyd George. Parts of two mosaics, that's one that he's actually pointed out there, were found, including one depicting a walking lion, the street's namesake, i.e. so when you go to Colchester, Lion's Walk, it's named after the lion that they found associated with these mosaics in the 1970s. As well, and interestingly enough, they found a wooden bed, I kid you not, a charred wooden bed associated with the Boudiccan period of AD 60, bedding material associated with the bed, and a box of dates, which were abandoned at the time and destroyed in the Boudiccan revolt. So massively interesting that. This is in the background. Bill will know this. I did say to Bill, if you hang on a bit, Bill, right, I'll buy you a drink in the hole in the wall. And unfortunately, I got a bit carried away by the archaeology, couldn't be bothered. But that's there. And over on the right there, you've got what's known as the Balkan Gate, or the first bit of it before the actual arch. There's an arch there on the right there. So this is the excavations in front of the pub, and on the left of the hole in the wall pub. It's called the hole in the wall pub, but that's where, because it's now the Balkan Gateway. So you've got more of the wall on the left, you've got more of the wall on the right. So evidence uncovered during the excavation of the Balkan Lane here. Few things that you don't hear of. They found evidence of an aqueduct. This would have been, this wouldn't have been sort of a typical Pont de Gare aqueduct, but necessarily an aqueduct. Water remains, and they found evidence of a roadside stall. So obviously a bit of a building with lots of bits of bones there, you know, gnawing away. They found similar evidence of Chilean, actually. And so we've got more of the ditches and stuff that they excavated here, and massively interesting, this bit of archaeology, and also defensive ditch associated with the Boudiccan period as well. This wonderful image again, where they're excavating again Culver Street excavations in the 1980s, and this was they found obviously a massive mosaic area here associated with the rebuilding at Colchester. You just think of that there. Now that's all been covered up. Now if that would been found today, it would be, they would display, they you know, people, there'd be a glass thing and they'd display it. Things have changed now. And it was last year, the outside the vape shop, which is near Lion's Walk, they've actually found they found a mosaic. So they said, we're going to keep the mosaic there in situ, and now they've got a glass thing above it, so you can look down, you can see a bit of mosaic. Love it. So this is what we're doing. We're using archaeology now, we're connecting it with people. And it's a shame that we didn't think like that in the past. What we used to do, we used to rip these mosaics up and put them in museums, which I think is the worst place. One of my most, a sad memory, I remember going to the British Museum when I was 11, and I saw these mosaics on the wall. I thought, well, what are they doing on the wall? Oh, we haven't got space to display them, so they go on the wall. So they'd left them in the localities and just used them as part of the community. That's the problem with archaeology. What we do, we put it in museums. We don't make it relevant to the local people. We need to do more of that. And this is what they're starting to do in London, well, more than ever, and they're starting to do in Colchester. So go back, good thing to them, you know. They're making archaeology really relevant. So this bit here, you can see all the trenches and stuff here, which these lines here indicate evidence. And you've got some stone stuff there. This is actually some of the legionary barracks were uncovered and investigated. And this itself is one of the weird things. I mentioned this briefly earlier on, and we haven't got long, Richard. So maximum 10 minutes, Richard. So if you're still there, so we won't be long. He's got to have his dessert soon. So the one thing about all of this is that when they were excavating, they found obviously bits of Roman building from later on, but they didn't find the black earth layer straight away. They actually found a domestic layer. And then they found the black earth layer, and they found all this stuff, which was, all this stuff was flattened in the Boudiccan period. And the point is that people were too afraid to go back to Colchester in large numbers. So they decided to rebuild some of the structures, and they decided areas that had been flattened by Boudica, they actually used as gardens. They actually farmed inside the city walls of Colchester because they were too afraid at that stage still. And too many people were dead. So, and that's one thing. That is one thing. When I say too many people are dead, I'm assuming that too many people are dead, right? We've not got much in the way of human remains in Colchester in these black layers, and I'm thinking, is this being overplayed by the historians? So we'll come back to that again. We might not remember it, but we'll come back to that again. So further excavations again, we're looking at mosaics like this, 2003, associated with later Roman buildings. This is now this is in from 2003. They found Roman mosaics in 2003, but this itself, this specific one, is from 1979. It's known as the Middlesbrough mosaic, and the Middlesbrough mosaic itself is an extraordinary mosaic indeed. And this was laid associated with the villa built outside Roman Colchester. And when they looked at this, they found out, this is obviously after the Boudiccan stuff, they found out this is made up of 250,000 mosaic pieces. Some of the stuff is from the Mediterranean, some of it is from sort of France, some of the mosaic pieces are from Britain, some of the bits of tile, some mosaics in, for example, not this one, but some mosaics in Pompeii actually use gold tessera, bits of gold tessera, I kid you not. And this is around 4 meters, no, start again, 5 meters by 5 meters, quite big. It's, the area that I'm sort of still sitting in West Wales by sort of, this take up most of the room. Huge, again. Later stuff, naturally, but one thing I wanted to say, right, is that I wanted to mention, right, that what we've got is that you're looking at the earliest stone remains of Plinth. You're looking at some of the earliest stone remains of Roman masonry in Britain. Not built in AD 50. This dates from AD 43. I kid you not. So this for me is massively important. This was found in hugely important, huge, massive. So so this was found in 2000 and associated with the old post office, and now the Odeon's built on it. It'd be great to touch this, go, ooh, it's the earliest Roman stuff in Britain. So despite the existence, we've got pre-stuff underneath this. We know that there's Bronze Age, Iron Age stuff going on in Colchester. But I'll just read this and we'll come to an end in a few moments. So the Roman period remains include a fortress period plinth, again repeating that, amazing, right? And a contemporary gravel street. So this itself is the earliest ever in Britain. Now, you can't get any earlier than AD 43, except if Caligula did actually land a military mission in Britain and they started building stuff. But that's another thing. That's my own stuff, right? But what you've got is you've got then above this, that's the thing. To get to the earth, they had to get rid of all the stuff above it. So any Roman building material above this, they had to remove it to get to here, which is preservation by record. So they photographed it, saved something relevant, got to this. So again, looking at that there, she's as pleased as punch, and I would be as well. There it is, the earliest Roman material in Britain. Again, I'm going to say it ever because you can't get, or maybe you can, but loving it. Just one thing that me and Bill went to see the Roman cursus that was excavated by 2008, and basically that was associated with lots of domestic stuff. Roman cursus, which is Roman racetrack in Colchester, which had me and Bill went there with the rest of everybody, seated apparently 8,000 people. So indicating, if you've got an arena that big, indicating eventually the sizable population of Colchester by probably AD 150 was probably close on, coming up to 8,000, maybe 10,000 people. Unfortunately, much of the stone stuff to do the Cursus Monument is now gone, but me and Bill sort of saw stuff, and there was a museum there as well. And just moving quickly, we will finish at 10 past. Thinking about this is interesting. Found that 2005, associated with the excavation of the grammar school. This is a Roman tomb, hexagonal tomb in the middle, with a rectangular wall around the outside, a central tomb in the middle, dating from about the AD 200s, possibly demolished in the Roman period, and the material used for building. And they forgot about it by the AD 300s. But the one interesting thing about this is that, we can't, we can tell that this was a special building, and they used volcanic sort of tufa, which would have been brought in from the continent to build this. So it was a special building when it was built in the AD 200s, but obviously people forgot. So, that type of material would be used in gateways was actually used on this tomb. What was particularly interesting about this, however, was the finding remains of a sparrowhawk, along with the bones of at least 4 other young falcons. Sparrowhawk and human remains could suggest that the buried person was a falconer, although we aren't entirely sure. And probably the smaller falcons were obviously found dead, because the young ones, and probably buried with the guy. And finally, this is again associated with the college. They were excavating in 2006, and this itself is a pool that you've got tessellation, you've got a painted sort of wall. This was a small little sort of pool associated with a building, a bathhouse, probably maybe a shrine, so that's good. And they found sort of gaming pieces associated with the domestic house, so really, really rich and being preserved. Again, we can look at these again. And then one last thing, a couple of last things, moving on. This is likely associated with sort of destruction in the Boudicca period on a much larger mosaic floor, a tessellated paving, and then this is really important. And I'm going to mention just a few bits of detail, and this is going on a little bit longer, but among this debris that they excavated here at this bit, the Boudiccan layer, they found ceramic kitchen and tablewares, lamps, Egyptian sort of material from Egypt. Additionally, a remarkable collection of carbonized foodstuffs in this building, including cereals, pulses, exotic culinary herbs, spices, fruits, figs, dates, grapes, and many of this stuff that was found associated with this sort of bit of archaeology in the mosaic floor. And you can see that this has been burnt, because the mosaic floor is sort of darkened. Again, looking at all this again, we've got to, and what's going on there. And one last thing, this sort of image here, we'll finish on this. This is sort of more bits of the excavation, and this is sort of associated with a temple of Claudius, more evidence of destruction at this locality. And that'll be me today. All of these things that we've just seen will be coming at again, and we'll be examining more of Colchester in the future and lots of these localities. And again, thanks for joining me tonight. Camulus, Camulodunum. And one last thing, some people believe that this is Camulodunum is actually the place of, wait for it, King Arthur and Camelot, but that's another story. On that note, we'll call that a day. Let's see if there's any questions. And I do believe that Richard wants to say something before he goes.
Hey? Oh, very interesting. I haven't got a lot to say.
Okay,
quite
Richard, thank you very much.
the walls and everything. So
We like a bit of Roman wall, don't we, Richard?
yeah, I'd say they're quite impressive. Up in
I went.
Exeter.
Oh, Roxeter, yes, yes.
Yeah, pretty impressive there.
You went there very recently, didn't you?
A couple of years, about 2 years ago.
With the missus, yeah. You had a holiday up there. You told me. That was good. That was good. Anyway, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Richard. Anything from you, Goff?
No, it's fascinating. Yeah, nice images as well. So thanks very much.
My pleasure. More of Colchester and London down the road. So again, I'm looking forward to doing a full excavation report on all that sort of timber stuff found in Londinium. So that'll be good. Looking forward to that. Right. Okay. Bill. We can't hear you, Bill.
You muted him, remember?
Yeah, don't tell him that. He'll take it personally.
Why did I do that? Yeah, just going to say that the circus in Colchester was more impressive than the double gate. I thought, Carl, it was amazing because the layout was there. You could see exactly what was happening and the dimensions as well, how big it was, you know. But, you know, I've been to London many times. I don't think I've ever seen any Roman remains at all. And I've never been to the Museum of London. All the others, but not that one. Whether I'd ever make it, I don't know.
The problem is, right, with London, right, is that all of this, all the Roman stuff is sort of in one area. Right?
What's that? Oh, who's that?
Richard, I think it's your mic a minute, Richard. I'm gonna. Right, it was Richard. Right, it was Richard. Right, right. Go on, Bill. Say it.
Say what? I think I've said it actually. I'd like to go to London to see the Museum of London in particular. You know, whether I'll get there, I don't know. Probably never. But yeah, something I've missed over the years. Been to all the other museums, never that one for some reason.
I
Yes,
tell you.
it's a big
Sorry,
jigsaw,
Bill.
isn't it? It's a big jigsaw, isn't it? Which is slowly coming together. What happened?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, thank you, Carl. No, it's fine.
So, Bill, what I'll do, right? If I win the lottery, right, and I will hire a minibus, and you're not driving it, Bill. We'll hire a minibus. I'll drive it. No, I won't. We'll hire a minibus and we'll go down to London for a night and we'll visit all the Roman stuff.
Excellent. Yeah, that'll be good, wouldn't it? Okay, Carl. Thank you.
But Bill, you've got to bring a bit of totty with you. You can't wander around London with me without a good-looking woman.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll find someone somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Right, Richard, you can turn your mic back on. Anyone else want to say anything before we finish tonight?
Good night.
Yeah, just good night.
Okay, Richard.
Bye, everyone.
Okay then. Okay, well, say good night. Good night, Bill, Goff, and Richard.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Hello, folks.
Bye bye.
Duce, por favor. Duce. There's nothing wrong with a bit of Duce. Al Duce. Hope, not hate. I'm just saying that a lot now. It's just like the right thing to say. Just like nobody's joining us online anymore, really, except Black Petrus Dog and stuff. Bit of a shame. I'm going to go down to there. We're going to go down